My name is Edward Harrison, and I've spent the better part of my 68 years designing structures that would outlast the people who built them. They say architecture is about permanence, lines, foundations, balance. But no one ever tells you how fragile the human heart can be. These days, my world is small. Just me, the cottage I restored after retirement, and the echoes of a life that used to be full. I built this house for my wife, Margaret, 37 years ago. It was her dream: cedar beams, tall windows, the smell of pine carried in from the garden. She used to say the house breathed with love. After she passed, it started breathing differently. Quieter. The mornings here follow a rhythm. I rise before sunrise, pour a cup of coffee, and sit by the window overlooking the pond. The steam from the mug curls into the air, mixing with the faint scent of cedar and old books. I like the stillness. It reminds me that some things, at least, stay where you leave them. The only person who still visits is my daughter, Melissa. She's brilliant, far brighter than I ever was, but her brilliance built walls instead of bridges. Since Margaret's death, we've spoken less, shared less. She moved to the city with her husband, Ryan, and her world became meetings, numbers, and polished words. Whenever she calls, it's polite, rehearsed, like reading a script. Still, I tell myself she's just busy. That distance doesn't always mean disinterest. I want to believe that. That afternoon, I was reviewing sketches for a community hall I'd promised to donate my time to design. The sunlight stretched through the blinds in thin, golden stripes across my desk. I remember the exact sound my old computer made when it pinged, a notification I almost ignored. It was an email from Alan Spencer, my lawyer of 20 years. The subject line read: "Urgent, call me immediately. It's about Melissa." Something in my chest tightened. Alan wasn't a man who used words carelessly. I clicked the message open. "Edward, please call me the moment you see this. It's important, and it concerns Melissa." No explanation. No details. Just that. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, my hand frozen on the mouse. For reasons I couldn't explain, I felt my throat go dry. It wasn't fear, not yet, just a kind of heaviness that comes before a storm. I picked up the phone and dialed Alan's number. It rang once. Twice. Then his voice came through, steady, controlled, but laced with something I'd never heard from him before: hesitation. "Edward," he said, quietly. "Thank God you called. What's going on?" I asked. "You said it's about Melissa. Is she okay?" There was a pause on the other end. Just the faint sound of paper rustling, then a slow sigh. "Edward, you might want to sit down." I did. My chair creaked under me. "Alan, you're scaring me." He hesitated again. Then 5 words that hit harder than anything I'd ever built or lost in my life. "Edward, your daughter has stolen from you." At first, I thought I'd misheard him. The words didn't make sense together. Melissa and stolen, they didn't belong in the same sentence. "I don't understand," I said. "There must be a mistake." "I wish there was," he replied softly. "But it's serious. I've found something you need to see." I gripped the edge of the desk. Outside, the wind had started to rise, brushing the old oak tree against the windowpane with a slow, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. Alan's voice continued, calm but heavy. "I need you to come by first thing tomorrow. Please, don't contact her yet. I'll explain everything when we meet." I hung up the phone and sat there for a long time, staring at the glow of the computer screen. My reflection in it looked like a stranger, tired, hollow, older than I remembered. Melissa's photo sat on the shelf beside my desk, taken on her graduation day, her mother's smile shining through her eyes. I'd kept that photo as a reminder of pride. That evening, it looked like a question I no longer knew how to answer. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual, each second cutting through the silence like a blade. And for the first time since Margaret's death, I felt the floor shift beneath the foundation I thought was solid. That night, I realized, even the strongest structures can crumble from within. The next morning, I barely slept. I kept replaying Alan's words in my head, as if saying them enough times would make them change meaning. Your daughter has stolen from you. When the first light crept through the curtains, I was already dressed. The coffee went cold untouched on the counter. I drove to Alan's office with both hands locked on the steering wheel, the road a blur of gray and motion. Alan Spencer had been my lawyer and friend for 2 decades. We'd shared dinners, mourned each other's losses, even built our retirement dreams on the same quiet promises: safety, family, peace. So when I saw the look on his face that morning, my stomach turned before he even spoke. He stood up when I entered, his expression tight, eyes careful. "Edward," he said softly, gesturing toward the chair across from his desk. "I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." "What's going on?" I asked, sitting down slowly. "Tell me." He took a deep breath, opened a manila folder, and spread several documents in front of me. "These," he said, "are recent filings under your estate trust. They bear your name, your signature, and were used to authorize multiple withdrawals." I leaned closer. The handwriting was eerily familiar. My name flowed across the page in ink I could have sworn was mine. That's my signature," I said quietly. Alan nodded. "It looks like it, yes. But it's not. We had it analyzed. The signature was forged." I stared at him, unblinking. "Forged by who?" He hesitated, then turned the next page. "By your daughter, Edward. Or, at least, by someone under her instruction." My world went still. The hum of the air conditioner, the sound of distant traffic outside, all of it disappeared. He kept talking, but it was like listening through water. Words like trust fund, liquidated assets, joint authorization, third-party firm floated around me, meaningless and sharp. I forced myself to focus. "How much?" He sighed. "Roughly $120,000 in bonds and certificates. But it's not just the money. She filed documents to transfer your property trust into a shared holding account under her and her husband's names." I blinked hard. "My house?" He nodded gravely. "Yes. On paper, it looks like you were restructuring for estate planning, very typical for someone your age. That's why it didn't raise red flags immediately." I shook my head slowly, disbelief fighting to stay alive. "No. Melissa wouldn't, she's not like that. She's my daughter." Alan's voice softened. "I know. And I truly hope she's being manipulated in this. But the documents were submitted using her digital credentials. Her personal email appears in the audit trail." He turned his screen toward me and clicked. There it was, an email chain from Melissa's account to a notary service, confirming submission. My throat tightened. "Alan, there has to be another explanation." He closed the folder and folded his hands. "Edward, listen to me. I've handled dozens of estate disputes. I've seen greed twist good people into strangers. It doesn't always start with evil. Sometimes it starts with desperation." I looked down at my hands, hands that had built homes, held my wife, taught my daughter how to draw her first straight line. "She doesn't need the money. Ryan's doing well. They have a house." Alan gave a bitter smile. "Ryan's company's been under investigation. Financial mismanagement, bad investments. It's possible he saw your estate as a lifeline." I swallowed hard. "And she helped him." Silence filled the room. When I finally spoke, my voice sounded smaller than I remembered it ever being. "What do I do now?" "First," he said firmly, "you don't confront her. Not yet. If she's part of this, she'll deny it and cover her tracks. I've already started the process of freezing your accounts. But we need proof, undeniable proof. He slid a small envelope across the desk. Inside are copies of the transactions and timestamps. I want you to keep them safe. And Edward, you may need to play along for a while. I frowned. Play along. Yes. Act as though you know nothing. Keep her close. Don't give her reason to hide evidence. I leaned back, staring at the papers. My name, my life, turned into a lie. Alan stood and placed a hand on my shoulder. I'll handle the legal groundwork. But emotionally, you'll have to prepare yourself. Sometimes justice costs something, even when you're the one wronged. I drove home in silence. The house that once felt warm now seemed colder, its stillness heavier. I walked through the living room, my eyes catching the photographs on the mantel, me, Margaret, and little Melissa in front of the cottage, all sunlight and laughter. I stopped in front of that picture for a long time. When I'd built this house, I designed every beam to hold, every wall to last. I thought love was the same, that if you built it strong enough, it couldn't fall apart. But that afternoon, staring at those forged papers in my hand, I realized that love isn't concrete. It's fragile. And the cracks don't appear all at once. Sometimes they start with a single, silent signature. The day after meeting with Alan, I woke up before dawn and sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. Melissa's name sat near the top of my messages, cheerful, casual texts from the week before about the weather, her son's school recital, and a reminder to eat more greens. I couldn't reconcile those words with the evidence sitting in my desk drawer. I'd spent my career designing buildings meant to withstand time, but I hadn't prepared for this, the slow collapse of trust between father and daughter. Alan's advice echoed in my head, play along, Edward. Keep her close. So when Melissa called that morning, her voice as sweet and familiar as ever, I answered. Dad, she said brightly, how about dinner this Sunday? Ryan wants to try that new recipe of his. My heart thudded once. Ryan. The man I now knew had been helping her move my life around like a set of numbers in a spreadsheet. I swallowed the bitterness. Dinner sounds nice, I said evenly. What time? 6. And don't bring anything, just yourself. We'll take care of everything. Her voice carried that same warmth she'd used all her life to get her way. I almost wanted to believe it again. By the time Sunday arrived, I'd rehearsed my part a dozen times. I told myself I'd go there not as a father, but as an observer, quiet, watchful, deliberate. Their house was larger than mine, modern, spotless. The kind of home that hides secrets behind gleaming countertops. When I rang the bell, Ryan answered, smiling too widely. Edward. Great to see you. Come in. I stepped inside, taking in the faint scent of lemon polish and expensive wine. Melissa appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Dad, she said, rushing over to hug me. Her arms felt warm but hollow, like she was performing a memory instead of feeling it. It's good to see you, I said softly. Smells wonderful. Ryan clapped a hand on my shoulder. Melissa's been planning this all week. Wanted to make sure you felt special. I smiled. She's always been thoughtful. Dinner was set beautifully, steak, roasted vegetables, red wine. Every detail perfect, as if the table itself were trying to convince me that everything was fine. We sat down. The small talk came easily enough. Work. The neighbors. Melissa's son getting good grades. For a while, I almost believed the performance, theirs, mine, all of it. But under the laughter, I saw it, a nervous rhythm. Melissa's eyes flicking toward Ryan before answering certain questions. His occasional glance at her phone on the counter, face down but close enough to grab. Between bites, Ryan leaned back and asked, too casually, so, Edward, still working with that lawyer of yours? Alan, right? I looked up slowly. Alan? Yes. Why? He shrugged, smiling. Just curious. You mentioned something about estate planning last year. I figured he's still helping you with that. Melissa tensed. I caught it, the faint tightening of her jaw before she forced a small laugh. Ryan's always interested in how people plan for the future, she said, brushing his arm. I smiled faintly. Good to plan ahead. Keeps things organized. Ryan nodded, his grin too smooth. Absolutely. You've worked hard your whole life, Edward. It'd be a shame not to have your legacy managed properly. I felt my pulse rise, but I kept my tone even. Legacy, I said quietly. That's an interesting word. He chuckled. You know what I mean. Melissa interrupted quickly, Dad, have you thought about simplifying things? You know, the paperwork, the house. It must be a lot to manage. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge underneath, a careful testing of boundaries. I've thought about it, I said, setting my fork down. But I'm not ready to hand over the blueprints just yet. Ryan gave a short laugh, not realizing the double meaning. Melissa's gaze flickered away. For a while, no one spoke. The air grew thick with something unspoken, guilt, perhaps, or fear of discovery. To break the silence, I asked about her son's new school project. Melissa brightened instantly, launching into a story about science fairs and late nights building models. I listened, nodding, watching how her hands moved as she spoke, confident, expressive, still the little girl who used to help me draw house plans at the dining table. That memory stung. After dessert, I excused myself to the bathroom. But instead, I stepped quietly into Ryan's home office down the hall. The door was slightly ajar. On the desk were stacks of financial papers, receipts, and a sleek laptop still open. One folder caught my eye, Harrison Holdings, transfer authorization. My name. My handwriting, or what looked like it. I snapped a quick photo with my phone, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Just as I turned to leave, I heard Melissa's voice behind me. Dad? I froze. Then turned, forcing a calm smile. Just looking for the restroom, I said lightly. I guess I got turned around. She smiled, but her eyes searched mine for something. It's the other way. I nodded, murmured thanks, and walked past her, feeling her gaze follow me down the hallway. Back in the car later that night, I sat with the engine off, the silence heavy around me. The streetlights reflected off the windshield like ghosts. Alan's plan had worked so far, they suspected nothing. But seeing her there, smiling, laughing, pretending, it hurt more than the theft itself. I pressed my hands to the steering wheel, whispering into the quiet. I raised you to build things that last, Melissa. Not to destroy them. Then I started the car and drove home, each turn of the road pulling me deeper into something I could no longer call family, but couldn't yet let go of. By the next morning, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to wait for answers, I was going to build them, the same way I'd built every structure in my life, deliberately, one piece at a time. Alan's words from our last conversation echoed in my mind. We don't rush this, Edward. We gather proof. Let them show their hand. So that's what I did. Alan arranged a meeting at his office downtown. The air that morning was cold, sharp enough to sting. As I walked through the glass doors, I felt like I was stepping into a world where emotions had to wait outside. He was already there, sleeves rolled up, files spread across his desk. You did well last night, he said without preamble. You didn't confront her. That's important. I nodded. But I found something in Ryan's office. He raised an eyebrow. Show me. I handed him my phone with the photo of the folder labeled Harrison Holdings, transfer authorization. Alan studied it, then looked up. This matches the timeline of the forged documents. They've got physical copies too, which means they're preparing for a follow-up transfer. He leaned back, thinking. Edward, I want you to listen carefully. We're going to let them try. I stared at him. Let them? Yes, he said calmly. That's how we make this airtight. We'll feed them a scenario that looks real, a decoy. They'll expose themselves completely. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a file. This is what we're calling the legacy document. It's a false estate amendment. It makes it appear as though you're transferring the remainder of your assets to Melissa for streamlining purposes. I frowned. And if they act on it? He smiled thinly. Then we'll have our proof. Every email, every digital trace, every signature attempt, all recorded and time-stamped. Alan had already contacted a forensic accountant, a man named Franklin Ellis, quiet, meticulous, with the patience of a chess player. He specialized in tracing money through the kind of financial mazes people like Ryan thought were foolproof. Franklin joined us in the office later that afternoon. His greeting was brief but respectful. Mr. Harrison, I'm sorry you're going through this. I'll make sure they leave a trail even they can't erase. For the next hour, the three of us went over the plan like architects at a blueprint table. Alan would prepare the decoy documents. Franklin would monitor all electronic activity linked to Melissa's and Ryan's devices. My role was simple but critical, to act exactly as before. Call her this week, Alan instructed. Mention that you're simplifying your estate. Tell her you're considering transferring everything to her name to make life easier. Keep your tone natural. Let her believe you're softening. It made my stomach turn. I have to lie to my daughter. Alan's voice softened. She already lied to you, Edward. We're just giving her the chance to do it again, under our watch. That evening, I sat at my desk, the phone in my hand, rehearsing the lines like an actor in a play I never wanted to perform. Finally, I pressed call. She answered on the second ring. Dad. How are you? I forced a warm laugh. Good, sweetheart. Just thinking about some things, maybe it's time I start putting my affairs in order. I'm not getting any younger, you know. She chuckled lightly. Oh, Dad, you're not old. But, what kind of things? Oh, just simplifying, I said casually. The accounts, the property. I might transfer some of it to your name soon. Less hassle for the future. There was a pause, just a second, but it was enough. When she spoke again, her voice had softened, careful. That's very thoughtful, Dad. You've worked so hard your whole life. I'll help however I can. Ryan's voice murmured something faintly in the background. Melissa covered the receiver for a second, then came back. Ryan says that's a great idea. He can help you with the logistics, if you want. I smiled grimly to myself. That's kind of him. After we hung up, I called Alan. She took the bait. He exhaled. Good. Franklin's setting up trace monitoring on their end. If they move a finger, we'll see it. Over the next week, I acted my part perfectly. I spoke to Melissa twice more, warm, trusting, a little forgetful when I needed to sound vulnerable. I mentioned that I'd be visiting Alan soon to finalize the handover. Each time, she grew more eager. Her tone became almost rehearsed, reassuring me I was doing the smart thing, that she'd handle all the details. Franklin called me one evening. We're seeing activity. They've been accessing your online estate portal, using cached credentials from last year. Alan's plan was working. 3 days later, Melissa called me herself. Dad, Ryan thinks you should include his firm in the new structure. He says it'll make the process smoother, fewer legal steps. I almost laughed. Of course he does. But I played along. That sounds fine. Maybe Alan can coordinate with him. There was a pause, nervous laughter. Sure, I'll tell Ryan. I could practically hear the greed breathing through the phone. That Friday, Alan called. His tone was brisk but triumphant. They bit. The submission just came through, forged authorization using your digital ID, exactly like before. Franklin's got the full trail. He paused. Edward, we're ready for the next phase. What happens now? I'm setting up a meeting at my office. Tell Melissa you want her and Ryan there to finalize the paperwork. We'll handle the rest. My chest tightened. Alan, what are you planning to do? Expose them, he said simply. With every shred of evidence in front of them. That weekend, I called Melissa and asked her to join me for a final signing session. She hesitated at first, then agreed. Her voice trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it with cheer. When I hung up, I sat alone in my study, looking at the framed blueprints of all the homes I'd designed over the years, every line clean, precise, purposeful. I thought about the foundation of family, how I'd believed it was stronger than anything man-made. But the truth was harsher. Even the most beautiful structure can collapse if someone you trust starts hammering at its base. The trap was set. And my daughter, my only child, was walking straight into it. The morning of the meeting, the sky was overcast, the kind of dull gray that feels like it's holding its breath. I woke early, made my coffee, and sat at the table without drinking it. My hands were steady, but inside, my heart carried the weight of a man walking into a storm he didn't create but couldn't avoid. Alan had been clear, you don't have to say much, Edward. Let the evidence speak. Just be there. I drove to his office in silence. Every mile of road between my home and downtown felt heavier than the one before. When I arrived, the building loomed above me, glass, steel, and clean lines, the kind of place where truth and deception often shared the same elevator. Alan greeted me with a firm handshake. You ready? He asked quietly. I've been ready since the day she forged my name, I replied. He nodded once, then led me to the conference room. It was large and cold, sunlight filtering through half-drawn blinds. A single folder lay open on the polished table, my life reduced to documents and evidence. At precisely 10 a.m., the door opened. Melissa walked in first, her face composed but pale. Ryan followed, exuding that same shallow confidence I'd seen a dozen times before. His tie was perfect, his smile rehearsed. Dad, Melissa said softly. You look tired. I didn't answer. I simply nodded. Alan gestured for them to sit. Thank you both for coming. I wanted to clear up a few issues regarding Mr. Harrison's estate planning. Ryan leaned forward, flashing a polite grin. Of course. Always happy to help. Melissa mentioned Edward wanted to finalize the transfer paperwork. Alan's expression didn't change. We'll get to that. First, I'd like to review some recent activity. He opened the folder, slid 2 sheets of paper across the table, and turned his laptop screen toward them. Mr. Harrison, could you confirm this is not your signature? I leaned in, looking at the form. My name flowed across it, the same curve of the E, the same slant in the H. For a moment, it almost fooled me. That's not mine, I said quietly. Alan nodded. Thank you. Then he looked straight at Ryan. Mr. Reynolds, do you recognize this document? Ryan's smile faltered for the first time. No, can't say that I do. Alan clicked his mouse, and a digital log appeared on the screen, timestamps, IP addresses, authentication details. This document was submitted from your firm's network, using credentials tied to your assistant's computer. It was uploaded under Melissa's authorization code. Melissa blinked rapidly. I don't understand. There must be a mistake. Alan's tone stayed calm but precise. It's not a mistake. We traced the file chain. We also have a video recording from your assistant's computer, remote screen capture, showing the submission in real time. Ryan stiffened, color draining from his face. That's illegal surveillance. Alan leaned back slightly, unbothered. It's evidence collection under a lawful cybersecurity clause. You might want to read the fine print before throwing that word around. Melissa's breathing quickened. Dad, please, I swear, I didn't. Alan didn't let her finish. He opened another file. The transfer attempt also triggered a secondary alert we planted, part of a decoy operation designed by Mr. Harrison's forensic accountant. Every keystroke, every login, every attempt to access his accounts was logged and recorded. He pressed play. On the screen, an audio clip began. Ryan's voice, low and urgent. We'll just move the rest of it quietly. He won't notice, not until it's all done. Then Melissa's voice followed, trembling but unmistakable. Are you sure it's legal? I don't want to hurt him. It's fine, Ryan snapped. He'll never know. It's his fault for not letting go. The room went dead silent. Melissa's hand flew to her mouth. Ryan, what did you do? He turned on her sharply. You were part of this too. Alan closed the laptop. That's enough. Mr. Reynolds, as of this morning, the district attorney's office has been briefed. You're both under investigation for attempted fraud, forgery, and financial misconduct. Ryan shot to his feet. You can't prove intent. Alan stood too, his voice calm but iron hard. We already have. Sit down. Melissa's tears came fast now, real and uncontrolled. Dad, please. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Ryan said it was just a temporary transfer. He said we'd fix it later. I looked at her, my little girl, the same one who used to sit on my lap while I drew blueprints, asking why every beam needed balance. And now she sat across from me, her voice breaking, her foundation gone. I spoke quietly. Melissa, you forged my name. You stole from me. But worse, you broke the one thing your mother and I built to last. She sobbed harder. I was trying to protect us. Ryan said. Ryan cut her off. Don't put this on me. Alan motioned toward the door. A uniformed officer entered, calm and professional. Detective Lee, please escort Mr. Reynolds out. Ryan's confidence cracked completely. This is insane. You'll regret this, Edward. I met his eyes and said nothing. As the door closed behind him, the silence left behind was almost unbearable. Melissa sat trembling, mascara streaked down her face. Dad, please. I'll make it right. I'll give it all back. I folded my hands on the table. It's not about the money, Melissa. It never was. I would have given you everything if you'd just asked. But you took it like a thief, not because you needed it, but because you thought I'd never notice. Her voice cracked. I didn't want to lose him. I stared at her for a long time, searching for the daughter I remembered. You already lost yourself. She looked down, whispering through tears, I'm sorry. Alan spoke softly. Melissa, the authorities will decide what happens next. But for now, you're free to go home. You'll receive a formal notice by next week. She nodded weakly, then stood. For a moment, she hesitated at the door, looking back at me, a silent plea for forgiveness I wasn't ready to give. Then she left. When the door closed, the weight in the room lifted slightly, but the ache in my chest didn't. Alan exhaled, rubbing his temple. I'm sorry, Edward. I know this isn't how you wanted things to end. I nodded slowly. It's how they had to. We stood there in silence for a moment, two men who'd both seen too much of what greed can do. Finally, I said quietly, I thought I built a strong foundation for my family. Turns out, I was wrong about the material. Alan looked at me and replied, maybe. But you rebuilt it today, with truth. Outside, the sky had started to clear. I walked to my car feeling lighter and older at the same time. As I sat behind the wheel, I looked down at my hands, the same hands that had drawn homes, repaired roofs, built dreams. And for the first time in a long while, they trembled. Justice wasn't victory. It was survival. And survival always comes with a cost. I started the engine and drove home through the soft rain, the city blurring behind me, the memory of my daughter's tears following me like shadows in the rearview mirror. It's been 6 months since that day in Alan's office, and though the courts have done their work, the real battle has been quieter, the one that takes place in the heart. The district attorney pressed charges against Ryan for forgery and attempted grand larceny. He pleaded guilty after the evidence came forward. Melissa's involvement was reduced to aiding and abetting, but because she cooperated, she was spared prison. Instead, she's rebuilding her life somewhere outside the city. I haven't seen her since that final day in the courthouse, but she writes now and then, short letters, careful words. They come folded neatly, always ending the same way. I'm trying to be the person Mom raised me to be. I don't always know how to answer. Some days I can. Some days I can't. The house feels different now, not haunted, just honest. I've restored the study, repaired the old drafting table, and filled the shelves with new sketches. Designs I'll never build, but that keep my hands busy and my mind clear. I spend mornings on the porch with my coffee, watching the mist lift off the pond. The silence isn't heavy anymore. It's peaceful. I think Margaret would have liked it this way. Sometimes I catch myself wondering what Melissa felt the moment she realized I knew, the instant the lie collapsed. I don't think it was greed that drove her. It was fear. Fear of losing security, of losing control, of failing someone she loved. But fear, when you feed it lies, grows into something dangerous. Alan called last week to tell me the final restitution payment cleared. My accounts are whole again, but money can't fix the cracks that kind of betrayal leaves behind. Only time, and grace, can do that. The night after that call, I went through a box of old papers in my study. At the bottom, folded between yellowed blueprints, I found a drawing Melissa made when she was 9. It was of our house, crooked lines, uneven windows, but on the roof she'd written in big block letters. Home is where you trust. I sat there a long time, staring at that childish handwriting. The irony didn't hurt anymore, it felt like a reminder, that trust, like architecture, must be maintained. Neglect it, and even the strongest foundation will shift. I didn't throw the drawing away. I framed it and hung it by my desk. Not as a symbol of pain, but as proof that we can build again, even from ruin. I've learned something through all this: forgiveness isn't about pretending it didn't happen. It's about refusing to let it define the rest of your life. Melissa will carry her guilt for a long time, and I'll carry the memory of what she did. But maybe that's balance, imperfect, fragile, and human. I still walk through the garden every evening. The wind moves through the trees the same way it did when Margaret was alive. Sometimes I catch the faintest scent of her perfume, lilac and cedar, and for a moment, everything feels whole again. I whisper to the air, not expecting an answer. We made it, love. The house still stands. Then I lock the door behind me, the click of the latch sounding less like an ending and more like peace finally settling in. If stories like this one remind you that truth and dignity always find their way through even the darkest betrayals, subscribe to Untold Bloodline Stories. Because every family carries secrets, and sometimes, the truth is the only thing strong enough to rebuild what's broken. The best revenge isn't anger. It's peace, earned, not given.